This, ladies and gentlemen, is my friend Sam Sanden. He's the associate pastor at Father's House Church. And maybe, Sam, you can just kind of give us an idea of how you got to Longview, because that's been an interesting ride for you.
Yeah, it's a long story for sure. So, I grew up in Sweden. I was fortunate enough to grow up with a family that, my family, not with a family, but in a family where both my parents went to church. My grandparents were believers, and in Sweden that's kind of rare in the sense that I think it's about 3% that are believers in Sweden.
Wow.
Like you would call, Bible-believing believers. And I grew up in the Bible Belt, which basically was 10% of the population were believers there. So grew up in church, and always try to be the good guy. And then finally in high school, God really got a hold of me. It was kind of at the time of the Toronto revival, and came to Sweden a little bit later, and just got exposed to the Spirit in a new way. Grew up in a Pentecostal church, so things of the Spirit weren't unusual, but not to the level that we experienced with the Toronto blessing as that came. And that kind of changed my trajectory. I wanted to go in the Air Force for the longest time, and but that sophomore year in high school, I really started to understand what God really had and how real He was, and that changed it. So, wanted to go to Bible school and had to do a year in the Air Force first. We had national service back then. It's changed now, but so did a year in the Air Force and went to England to go to Bible school there at Kensington Temple. It's a Foursquare church, and the school is called International Bible Institute of London. And so I moved there, and in my second year, sure enough, ended up coming to do the creative arts part of the school, as I did the Bible part, and we met, and then from there I was still pastoring in London, was an interim pastor while Shanessa got involved in a Christian pop band called Vienna. And by the time my interim job was over, they needed a road manager, so got involved doing road managing, anything from driving cars to booking hotels to selling merch.
Wow.
Everything but the singing and dancing, as I like to say it. And then through that, the plan was to move to Nashville, as we had been based in England with the band and had a record deal in Nashville, and that kind of ultimately brought us to Nashville right before 9/11.
Wow.
And so we thought everything was set up, everything ready to go. We had some gigs. We had a new gal that was going to do it with Shanessa, and literally within weeks of coming there, God just started closing the doors. 9/11 happened, and the Prospect record deal, the gigs that were supposed to come, even things like the apartment we had paid the deposit on, didn't happen, and we were really at a loss. And normally I don't give up after 3 weeks, right? But we just really pressed into the Lord, because it felt like everything had shifted overnight. And we prayed and fasted for probably a week, and God kind of gave us, it felt like the options were going back to England, going to Sweden, staying national, just trying to make things happen, or come back to Longview to kind of regroup and see what God had. Fast forward then coming here, we thought, this is just the holding pattern before we'll move to Seattle or to Portland, because that's the big cities, that's where things will happen, right?
Yeah.
And we came here and didn't know what God wanted us to do, and the door opened for Shanessa to basically, we did a dance camp for a day, I think, to see if there was any interest in anyone wanting to learn dancing, and I think we had like 40 students that day, so that's how our dance studio got started, right on the heels of that. And then come the new year, Chuck was saying, hey, do you guys want to help with the youth? And we're like, well, we'll help for now, but we think God maybe have something else for us. And he said, well, if you're here for 6 months, that's great, if longer, whatever. And that lasted 9 years.
Apparently it was longer than that.
Yeah, we fell in love with this place.
See, this is one of the most difficult things about talking to you about what you're doing and where you've come from, is the story is like chock full of information and little side trips, and we prayed about this and this happened and then it changed. But the one thing that's been stable through the whole thing is your relationship with Father's House, and your the dance studio that has developed and become a huge thing in the area. I mean, there are other dance studios, but my feeling is, honestly, Sam, they try to emulate you guys and what you're doing. So that's been a big part of your life. But there are so many things that you seem to be drawn to, a lot of social justice issues, and a lot in the last couple of years about who we are as a church and
Yeah.
how we operate in the culture.
Yeah.
So could you talk a little bit about the thing that's like stirring you, or there may be one or two things that are really stirring you right now?
Yeah, I think the basic DNA has been all along, and is to see the church discipled and mobilized.
Yeah.
And it's when you do youth ministry, it's a little bit different because you pretty much have your hand in everything, and it's a little church in itself, right? So transitioning from youth to associate, that kind of was a little bit of a rethinking. Okay, how do we address this, or how do we go from here?
Yeah.
And right about that time, we got involved with another nonprofit that we started helping, that was working in regards to the federal budget and foreign aid and that kind of stuff. And also we got exposed to kind of the Seven Mountains concept, where really the church, we're to be salt and light.
Yeah.
And for so long we have taken that to believe that the change happens within the four walls of the church, or maybe we do outreach, homeless, that kind of stuff,
Right.
and which we've done for a number of years as well. But what really opened our eyes was that we're all gifted differently, we all have different passions, and instead of trying to get everything come to the church and make things happen, that we don't need to equip the body to do the work of the ministry.
Right.
And what the Seven Mountains is talking about is that there's these spheres of influence which help shape culture. So you have the family, you have religion, you have business, arts and entertainment, government, education, and media. And I think that's, I don't know if I got all seven, but the concept is that God has placed us in different fields, right? We've been sown into the world, and we're not just to drag people to church for them to be changed and transformed, but that we are to be involved and be salt and light where He's placed us.
Right.
So that's we kind of got involved with some of the social justice, in the sense of we're the hands and feet of Jesus. And I think as of lately that term has kind of been co-opted and misunderstood, because it's Jesus and being involved in culture, right? And then out of that, arts and entertainments have been part of our hearts for a long time, with Sharnessa being involved in that, and we've done a few musicals, and our heart is to develop more and kind of create the stories that the world will find appealing and attractive, but it's the truth of the gospel in there, right?
Right.
And there's something about music and drama that kind of put people's defenses down. There's no coincidence, like something like Hamilton touched the heart of so many people, even though it's history, but yet the music and the arts kind of bring something out. So
Right.
we've been wanting to do that, and we've done at least, I think we've done 2 musicals, and we're hopefully working on another one here soon. But then as of the last few years, what kind of a shift in addition to that, and being involved in business, in the business world and that kind of stuff, is probably the government, right? In the civics of our culture. And because for so long, I think the church has kind of had this view that the politics is dirty.
Yeah.
And I love what Rob McCoy says, is that, well, so what? So is the church, right? and I think when we have kind of abdicated the role of being a voice in the culture we're in, including government, including education, including business and arts and all those things, there's a vacuum. And then the values that comes in a vacuum are not the values of Jesus.
Earlier today, I was having a conversation. Took a couple pastors in to meet with a mayor, and we were having a conversation with Mary Alice when we were talking about homelessness and how there doesn't seem to be a really good answer for any of it, because we just need so many different ways to approach the problem. And one of the things I just kind of brought up to her was that all the major universities in the United States were started by churches. All hospitals were started by churches, the big major hospitals. They were all started by churches. And then the government began to get in the business of supplying the needs of the people, meeting people's needs, and we abdicated all that stuff, all that role to them. And I just said to her, the church could take care of homelessness in the city. It's just that we'd have to regroup, redesign things, reimagine who we are again, and go back to what you're talking about. And because we have all the resources, we have the people, we have the volunteers, we could do a lot more than what we're doing, but it just seems like the government's co-opted so much of that. It just feels like there's nothing left the church to do except meet on Sundays.
Right. Yeah, I think that's the mindset that we've fallen into, thinking that the government should do it. And I heard a quote this weekend that just because something ought to be done doesn't mean the government should do it, right?
Yeah.
And I think that it is so important to talk about that personal responsibility, that we were created to work, right? And when we are contributing to our lives, and we have that freedom of being an agent of free will, right?
Yeah.
It's something comes out of that. It's something to know you've done a work well done, and it's easy to fall into the trap of the victim mentality that doesn't help the person that's trapped in it, nor us finding solutions for it.
Yeah.
And looking throughout the history of our nation, how we're a country of immigrants, right? And I'm one of them. But what's so amazing about America is that opportunities that have come. And yeah, there's been hard times for people coming in, but with hard work and an attitude that we can change this, or maybe sacrifice for those coming behind you, there's a way to get to that next level and help change your station in life. But if it becomes that it's always someone else's fault, no matter what the context is, we abdicate that role as individuals, and we're missing out on something God's created us to do.
Well, not only that, but our culture is missing out on the light that we bring.
Exactly.
And we talk a lot about how the world's getting darker and darker, and maybe that some of that is just because the church is not quite as bright as it has been in the past. And maybe we just need to brighten up a bit. What do you hope happens in Kelso Longview that is a reflection of what God seems to be doing in some of the other places in the United States? Specifically here,
I think we need to understand that it's not just a sovereign move, right? It is sovereign in one sense, but at the same time, there needs to be a hunger. God is not going to force himself on us.
Right.
So if we as a church realize that business as usual is not enough, but that we need him, because without him we're nothing. Without him, we can manufacture some things that might look good and feel good for a while, but it's going to grow old very quickly. And I think that if we as pastors can help encourage and lead the way by us having hearts that are repentant and that are hungry for the Lord, and that we realize that we need more than just a good Sunday morning.
Right.
We need transformed lives, and transformed lives comes out of that encounter with the Lord. But we have the choice of saying, I'm happy where I'm at, or God, I need so much more. And that's the choice we all are facing. And I'm hoping that this is kind of stirring up a picture of what can be had, and not just that, but there's so much more to it.
Yeah.
I think one of the dangers that could be for older generation is thinking like, oh, this is so neat what God is doing with the youth, and you're disengaged. And while I love it starting with the youth, but I pray that doesn't stop there,
right?
Because we need revival throughout any age that's alive, and because that's the great revivals I read about in the past. It transformed everything, and not only did it transform people's hearts, it transformed then their lives, and then it impacted culture. I think that's where we're at in America with the founding fathers and Wesley and Finney setting the stage in a sense. This revival happened, and people started living different lives.
Yeah.
And when you look back, it's easy to think of everything was fine and great, when before that happened. But some of the things they were going through then are just like it is now.
Right.
But it took that hunger for Jesus, and not just that head transformation, but a heart transformation. And when we start living differently, that's when the world will see that we actually have something to offer that is worth fighting for. Because if our lives are no different than the world's, why would they want what we have?
So how's the hunger in Kelso Longview? Have you seen any changes in the last year?
I feel so, for sure. Yeah. I think we're at the point where we're tired of business as usual.
Yeah.
And we need him, because if he's not building his house, then we're building our own kingdoms, and that's not it. We need to build his kingdom, and it only comes when he does the work. So I'm excited. I'm hungry for more. I believe that people are at a point where there's enough dissatisfaction where we're at. There's the unknown that's taking place with whether it's in Ukraine or our financial issues or train derailments. the things that have been our safety blanket for a long time, I think is being ruffled. It's being shaken, and God wants to show what it cannot be shaken, and that our hope can only be in Him.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm optimistic, and I want to see more. I'm hungry for more.
I can't imagine you not being optimistic. You just have that kind of, you have that perspective on things, like there's always so much that we can do if we just get focused. I mean, one of the things that people talk to me about the revival, and one of the things I've told them was, it started because they didn't stop.
Right.
You know, it wasn't just their hunger. Their hunger was there, but when it came to the place where they were supposed to stop the meeting, they just didn't do it.
Yeah.
They just stayed. And I have this feeling there's something coming for us where we're going to have an opportunity to not stop, and we're going to make that move, and it's going to change a lot of things for us.
Yeah. But
whether it's a prayer meeting or a church service or whatever.
Yeah. But it's going to take guts, right? Because to not stop, it's hard.
Yeah.
Because we have to let go of our preconceived ideas, and are we willing to be inconvenienced, right? Because we have our clocks, we have our timelines. This is what's going to happen. Dinner's going to be ready, so are we willing to go without?
Yeah. I think one of the best things that's happening right now in our area, in the Kelso Longview area, is people like you, Sam, that are taking personal responsibility for the church. And it's not like you're waiting for somebody else to give you permission or make something happen, but you're just being you and being what the people around you need you to be right now as a leader. And so I just want to tell you thank you. You are a good leader, Sam. And I think there's so much more for our area, but I'm really glad that it's people like you that are going to have the leadership reins, because I think that there's something you bring to the table that's so full of hope and so wanting to not be in control, but let other people respond to the Lord the way that they want to and they need to. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it. We really hope today's episode was helpful. You'll find more resources and content to connect with other community leaders by going to our website, cityservecowlitz.org. So, it's been a joy to walk with you, and we'll see you.